Here.
Mike Stubblefield,
Here.
Gary Wendt,
Wilt.
Wilt?
Yes,
Sorry.
here.
All right, that gives us a quorum. Next, we're going to review the minutes of the last meeting and approve those. So does anybody want to motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I've read them. I motion that we approve.
A second.
We can all say aye on that one, I believe. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
So we pass, so that passes. Okay, I don't think we have any reports to go over. So we'll go on with the public hearings portion of the meeting. And I think we're going to start with the 4022 Sherburne Drive, John and Linda Holt. We're going to deal with civil citation 244 first. Jack, are we going to do these separately?
No, we're going to do them all together, and just so that we have close to a due process thought, my thought is we'll have Officer Jewett testify. I'm just going to ask him a few questions, but it's his show.
Okay.
And then we'll give you an opportunity to cross, and then if you want to have your client testify and argue, does that work?
Also, I would just say, from a standpoint of Mr. Holt, it had previously been decided, I think back in, was it November, December, he did not challenge those citations. And in fact, is paying them off on a monthly basis. He had a conversation.
Excuse me, not to interrupt, but do we want him on mic for this since we're recording it?
Yeah, and how about if you're okay, I want to give you all the time you want tonight. But
Shorebird, they really want to go through a lot of the testimony he gave, but we didn't, to show he's been working to clean all that stuff. He got, right after they made, I guess his one payment, he was informed that let's just keep cleaning up, and the next day he got
So
these 3 citations.
And I think we do need you on the mic so we can pick you up on the record. I'm sorry. Sorry. So I guess, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Are you stipulating that the citations were valid, and you just want to argue a reduction?
Basically to say, yes, there's issues. I don't know that it gives rise to that level, but yeah, there's things that need to be addressed that's been accumulating over the years, and he's got cited, and since he got cited back in the end of 22, he's been, as I showed you all the photos, hauling stuff out like crazy. But right after that began, then he got all of a sudden 3 new citations for the same thing that he was working on to get rid of from December.
I'd like to just start, and you'll have a chance to talk. I want to just let Officer Jewett kind of lay out a little history on the property.
Okay.
And then...
Go ahead.
All right. So, Officer Jewett, if you could just for the board kind of go through the history on this property and kind of how we are here tonight. With violations history, I should say.
This property had been brought to the city's attention initially back in December of 2018. There were a series of animal nuisance complaints at the property. December, February, April, twice in April. Each of the occasions, the property owners were spoken to. The issues were taken care of. There was no citations or warnings or anything like that issued during those occasions. The violations that we're dealing with here tonight have a varied history. The inoperative motor vehicles, that first came about in June of 2020. At that time, the parties were spoken to and no citation or paperwork was issued. Again, in September 11th of 2020, once again, parties were spoken to, items were taken care of, no citation or paperwork was issued. Then September 8th of 2022, the issues came back again, and that was within a calendar year of the violations, which constituted a $100 citation being issued. And then once again, November 17th of 2022, a second citation for $250, and then January 9th, a third citation in 2023 for $500. As it pertains to the vehicles on the unpaved surface, that first came to the city's attention November 17th of 2022 when a warning notice was issued. November 28th of 2022, a citation was issued for $100, and then on January 9th of 2023, a second citation was issued for $250. As it relates to the rubbish, September 11th of 2020, the parties were spoken to without any citation or paperwork issued. November 17th of 2022, a warning notice had been issued. November 28th of 2022, a citation was issued for $100. And then finally, on January 9th of 2023, a citation was issued for $250.
All right, so first, as it goes to the animal nuisance violations, there's 4 prior citations. There's nothing here tonight as it relates to the animal nuisances, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And on the second grouping, the inoperative motor vehicles, while there have been 2 prior citations, 2 no citations, tonight we're here on number 244, which is a citation you issued on January 9th, 2023 for $500, correct?
That's correct.
And did you witness on that date inoperable vehicles?
Yes, I did. There were still a number of inoperative vehicles on the property at the time of my inspecting the location, and that's what constituted the issuance of the third citation.
And I know I've seen photos of those. Do you have those tonight?
Yes, we do.
All right, if we could just. And first, did you take these photos?
Yes, I did.
And what date did you take these photos?
The photos were taken initially on September 8th of 2022, and then again January 9th of 2023.
Had the conditions changed any between September 8th, 2022 and January 9th, 2023?
Yes, they had. Some of the vehicles had been removed, but there were still others that had not.
All right, so I want the photo as it relates to the condition on the property for the citation at issue right now, the January 9th photo.
Do we have January 9th? Is that it? No.
Is that one?
No, it is not. I don't believe we have a current photo of the property right now on the file.
No, I just wanted it on the date of the citation, January 9th.
January 9th citation. Yeah. So
I'm sorry.
Those photos you're looking at were photos of the site at the day of the initial
Okay.
citation.
All right, so
On
the-
January 9th.
All right.
Steve, if you could bring those back up again. So that is the site as of the day that Darrell was out issuing the citation.
That's why I just.
And we have several photos representing that site as of that day.
That's the January 9th of this year date.
That is correct.
So the other one that we saw was, what date was that for?
Yeah, that's another location on the
Oh,
property.
okay,
Some other
okay. Okay.
All right, so as we move to the vehicles on the unpaved surface, let's move to citation 245, which you issued for $250 on January 9th, 2023. Did you observe the condition of vehicles on unpaved surfaces on that date?
Yes, I did.
And would that have been a violation of our nuisance code?
Yes, it is.
And was that listed on the citation?
Yes, it was.
And same question, did you take any photos of vehicles on unpaved surfaces for that day?
I took the photos for that night also.
All right, if we could just show those from the January 9th day.
You're going to find that several of the photos for each of the instances are duplicates, and that's because they're in and this is a photo of the inoperative vehicles, are also on an unpaved surface.
All right. Do you have a copy of the citation you issued?
Yes, I do.
All right. Can we pull that on the screen, or?
Yes.
And let's first go to the inoperative motor vehicle one. I just want to make sure we introduce that into the record. All right, so this is number 244 that was issued?
That's correct.
All right. And if you could just cite the section of the nuisance violation, I don't have my glasses on.
The offense number,
Yeah.
it's 104.02 subsection S.
All right, and if you could just read that, because I don't know if anyone can.
The use of any portion of any residential lot or parcel of real estate outside of a building for the storage or other location of any inoperable motor vehicles or any motor vehicle parts.
All right. And this was a third offense, and it's your position that those photos also showed that section of the code was violated?
Yes.
All right. If you could also pull up the citation for the vehicles on the unpaved surface, the January 9th, 2023 citation. All right, and same question, is this the citation that you issued for vehicles on unpaved surfaces?
Yes, it is.
And if you could just read the section of the code and the section of the nuisance code that's been violated?
It's 104.02 subsection R. The use of any area of ground outside of a building that is either unpaved or paved with something other than concrete or blacktop for the purpose of parking or any other location of a motor vehicle thereon, except that any such area of ground that has been continually used for such purpose since 1992 may continue to be used for such a purpose, provided that such area is continually covered with at least 2 inches of gravel.
All right. So there's an exception to that, which is property after 1992. Does that exception apply in this situation?
It's hard to tell from the location I took the photos, but from what I was able to observe, it does not look like there's 2 inches of gravel in that location.
All right. And then the third thing, the rubbish, if we could, let's start with the citation. If you could pull up the citation number 246 for rubbish.
245.
I'm sorry, I got my numbers wrong. All right, and again, maybe other people can read it, but my poor eyes can't see it even from here. So if you could read the section of the nuisance code that says rubbish and then what that means.
It's 104.02 subsection D, the accumulation of any municipal solid waste anywhere unless it is enclosed within a covered municipal solid waste container.
All right. And if you could, did you observe rubbish on the property on January 9th, 2023?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any photos of that?
Yes, I do.
All right. If we could maybe blow that up a little bit. So in your opinion as Erlanger Code Enforcement Officer, would that meet the definition of rubbish as a nuisance violation?
Yes, it would.
All right, I have no further questions. Your witness.
Mr. Jewett, you took these pictures from afar, is that correct? I mean, they were taken right there on the...
Yes, we can show you the location where I took the photos from. This is an aerial photograph of the property in question, not the first house from the street, but the property behind it. And where the arrow is where I was standing taking the photographs.
Gotcha. And we spoke about items that were on gravel. You just didn't know if there was 2 inches or 1 inch or half an inch, or you didn't know what the thickness would be.
That's correct.
Okay. And the rubbish that you were speaking about, was it that that playhouse, or was it the other, the
No,
vehicle parts, or
the
what?
playhouse- No, it was vehicle parts, barrels, tires, things of that nature. Construction equipment, building materials, stuff like that.
And the vehicles, as far as, you indicate that they're inoperable. And you know they're inoperable because they haven't moved, or because they can't move?
The vehicles hadn't moved in a period of time. Some of the vehicles, it was apparent that they didn't have tires, things of that nature.
And with the citations that were issued in November, December of 2022, those were the same types of citations for the same things that we're here for tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And is it your understanding and knowledge that Mr. Holt admitted or acknowledged those and has been paying on those fines that were issued for those citations?
The citations from November?
Yes.
Yes, I'm aware he has been making, he set up a payment plan for those citations, yes.
And and then, do you know how much of any that Mr. Holt has already removed? How many truckloads of items or cars that were moved, or anything subsequent to not only the December citation, but the January citation?
I cannot conclusively say how much he's removed. I am aware that he has removed some items. I've witnessed him working on the property on occasion.
Okay. Are you the only officer that's assigned to or works on this particular piece of property, or is it any other code enforcement officers were involved with this matter?
Over the course
I
of
mean,
the
sort of
property's
it's current
history,
stuff. I mean, the last, I'm sorry, I should refer, from the end, November, December to present.
these current citations,
Yeah.
that would be me.
Okay. And if I were to show you some photos, which I've already shown to Mr. Gatlin, of truckloads of items being removed, would you be able to recognize those as items that were being removed, or things that were being done at the site?
Possibly.
Okay. May I? Thank you.
I can't say I recognize anything in that one, but it's a little blurry.
Oh, that's a trailer full of odds and ends debris.
Okay.
These are the rear wheels of the trailer. It's a tandem.
Okay. Yeah.
Tandem axle.
Mhm.
Right there. I'm looking at
Yep.
a few circles. I looked at it in front of you first. I asked, what am I looking at?
I recognize these items, yes.
Thank you. those items, you looked at the photos, and those appear to be the items that we're talking about in this particular case. Is that correct?
Some of them, yes.
Okay. And that, of course, we'll have Mr. Holt will testify. But we have any doubt or dispute that he has removed all those items since for December of 2022 up to the present point in time? Anything to controvert that, I guess?
I don't understand the question.
I said Mr. Holt will ultimately testify, but you can see those items were loaded to be hauled away, removed from the site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I can tell.
And anything that you would dispute that could see that that's not the case?
No, there's nothing that could dispute that was the case.
Okay. These 3 citations were issued just very quickly after the citations that he acknowledged and admitted to and began paying on. Is that correct?
They were issued on January 9th. The citations he's paying on were issued November of 22.
Okay.
And there was a period where work was observed being done, and then there was a period in December where the work stopped.
And would you acknowledge that over that period of time, for example, the extreme low temperatures and rain and things like that we've experienced since November, at least up through at least into the we'll say the 1st of January. I know it's been nicer since then, but would you acknowledge that was in fact the case?
There were days of inclement weather. There were also days where the weather was well enough to continue the work.
Okay. And do you know if he worked on those days or didn't work on those days, removing items? I mean, if you know.
No, I do not know. On the days that I was present there was no work being done, which led up to the January 9th citations.
Gotcha. I don't think I have anything further of Mr. Jewett.
I just have one kind of just question. You could have cited him every day between November 17th and January 9th, or November 28th and January 9th, couldn't you have?
Per the statute, yes.
All right. So to some extent, you were giving him a break by giving him another 2 months to try to clean it up.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
To that end, is the purpose of citations when you're trying to get somebody to clean up or remove items? Is that the nature of enforcement?
The citations are used as essentially a last resort. We start off with speaking to the individual, issuing a warning letter, and informing them that if they start the work, if they need time, anything of that nature, to contact us and to speak to one of the 2 of us to get that time frame extended, with the knowledge and the guarantee that they maintain contact. If we don't receive contact any longer, then we go back to the process of going to inspect the properties, and if we don't see anything being done, then citations are the next step.
And I guess that's what I'm saying. To that end, citations were issued in November 22.
Yes.
Correct. And that we've shown the photographs of things that have been removed from December up to the present point in time. Correct?
That's correct.
And that, and so that work being in progress, was there a need for him to speak to somebody about that progress, or just the fact that he was working on it? Did he know he had to speak to somebody to say, I'm doing this or what I'm not doing? Do you know?
It was communicated to him to stay in contact with us, yes.
Okay. And he did not?
I'll have to have Steve Canfield answer that question.
Okay. No further questions. Okay. Is Mr. Caulfield, is that? Canfield, I apologize. I'd like to call him as the first witness, if I may. Sir, would you state your name and position with the city?
Steve Canfield, Public Works Department.
Okay. And that you've spoken a number of times with Mr. Holt about the cleaning of his property and things like that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Have you had occasion to speak to him or contact with him since November of 2022?
I don't recall after November talking to him. I don't remember the last date that I talked to him.
Okay. When you spoke to him, was it there at the property or here at the city or someplace else? Or
He showed up at the Public Works building.
okay, so he came to the city.
Yes.
Okay, and it was to speak to you or speak to somebody about the property or what he was doing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that are you aware of what he's been removing from the property since that point in time?
No, I'm not. I
Okay.
was not.
Okay, you weren't involved in it after that?
No.
Okay, okay. No further questions.
I have no follow-up.
Good. I'd like to call Mr. Holt, if I could. Would you come up here? Mr. Holt, would you tell the board that your name,
John Holt.
and you're the owner of the subject property here, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you receive some citations back in November of 2022 for the types of things we're talking about tonight?
Well, the thing about it is, they was sending citations, but they wasn't coming to me because they didn't put Independence, Kentucky on there. See, I was Independence all of our life. We've been there almost 70 years. And they was sending them, but they was putting Erlanger on there, and I wasn't getting them. So finally, they figured that out, and whenever I got it, I went over a couple times and tried to find Julie, and finally, I went over and jerked on the door. I'm sure he remembers, he opened up that door inside, went like this. He come to the door, opened the door up, just about that far. Mr. Holt, I don't know how he noticed me, but he noticed me. I'll take care of that for you. Everything's fine. He said, just keep cleaning. I said, Darrell, I'm cleaning up. I said, I can only do so much. Well, whenever it's raining and stuff, you go back there, you're soaking in mud and stuff.
Was this before the November citations or after the November?
I don't.
You don't know?
I can't remember, to tell you the
but you
truth.
got
He
November-
remembers when it was. I can't remember.
So you got November citations, and you acknowledge that you've been paying on those citations?
Yeah, well, the thing about it is, whenever I went there, Darrell says, I'll take care of that for you. He said, just keep cleaning up, but I can't keep taking care of them. I said, I am. I'm cleaning. I've been doing it. I was cleaning it up anyway. I give my boy that property that he went up on his property to take the pictures. And I give him that place. He built a new home there. And
Your son?
I want it to look good. I have firewood down there because I help. I burn wood, and there's a few elderly people that can't get out and do it. I'll get it and take it to them. You know what I'm saying?
Besides
But
all
I know that.
Besides, we just talk about these citations. So then you began paying on those citations.
Right.
And since then, what have you been doing to removing items from the property?
I've been removing them. I've been removing a lot of stuff.
The board and everybody has seen the photos. Those are photos of what?
Of all the vehicles and stuff that I've moved.
Vehicles that you took off of there. Where did they go?
They went to a couple of them, well, a few of them I took down to that friend of mine's got that big junkyard. Yeah. And he said, bring however many you want. Because, see, there's, some of them vehicles I took was my sons that passed away, and I can't get rid of them.
Yeah. So you took them off the property down to the junkyard. What about the other items of looks like pieces of metal or wood or things like that? Where did that go?
It went to the scrapyard. And,
Okay. Metal went to the scrapyard?
yeah.
What about other stuff that's not scrap?
Well, I took some of it to, my boy had these free dump pass. He filled his truck. That was his truck that we filled up and took down. And then I had that friend of mine got that dump trailer, which Steve seen it that day. I come over there looking for him. I had this dump trailer on my trailer. I just took and dumped a load and went back and stopped in there to see him because I kept coming over here. And then they moved from here to a different, I was trying to track Darrell to keep talking to him. I couldn't find him. I mean, every time I'd ask him, and then he'd never get a hold of me. I give him my number. He won't call me back. So that's all I can do.
So the rubbish items, where, you said to a dump, what dump, where?
It was down Bavarian down there.
Okay.
I've got a dump pass in the car, I think, where I took it. See, I took them other ones down, we took them in trucks. Then I took a bunch of stuff and I put it in that dump trailer because it's a lot easier to back up. You got to pay for it, but, you know, you got to do it.
Okay. The vehicles, what kind of vehicles are left on the property at the moment?
Well, we got my trucks, you know, that we,
Are those operable trucks?
oh yeah, they're insured, licensed, they got, we race cars, my boys race cars, you know, and they use them to pull them, and then I got my vehicles there, they're licensed, insured, and taxes paid, and, you know,
What kind of inoperable vehicles do you have on the site?
I got that behind my barn, I got that 53 Ford truck. It ain't got a motor in it, but I hate to junk it because people fix them up and stuff. That's what, yeah.
Okay, 53 Ford truck.
Yeah, I'm wanting to get rid of it. There's a couple, 53 and a 54 Ford truck. And, you know, I got, well, my tractor, well, my dad's tractor before he passed away, it's operable. It's a John Deere and stuff. But other than that, I mean, I had a camper that I was taking apart because it's got real low miles on it. Not the one I showed you that I tore up, a different one that guy over at Turfway Park, that man had it. And I was taking the motor stuff out and it's junked. You know, I cut it up. So other than that, I'm just,
What you cut up, is it still there at your property or is it gone?
well, most of it's gone, but the part with the motor still, I mean, it's up, it ain't on dirt or nothing, but it's, you know, I'm pulling the motor and stuff out and putting the motor inside because it's a good motor.
Okay, so you have, we can see the garages of stuff that's up there. So there's room to put, when you take this motor off this frame, that you'll be able to take that inside?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the frame is going where?
Junkyard.
Okay.
Yeah,
But,
junkyard.
Any kind of other rubbish that's on the property still?
No, I mean, it's cleaned a bunch,
Yeah.
a big bunch.
No. Are there, how often are you working on the property?
Well, I mean, I work every day. This week I worked as long as it ain't raining. And hell, I worked out there last night, late out there. And I'm working as much as I can. I mean, when it's real cold out, the only one I got helping me is my brother. My boys help whenever they're off work, but they work every day, you know. I can't expect them. Yeah. My brother, he's almost 80, you know, and he goes out and helps all he can, but that's the way we're doing it. And Steve, he helped. He brought his roll back and towed them down there and put them in his place. He said, I keep them there. I got a couple. Well, you know, Moyer, he told me I could bring all I want out there, but I don't like asking people.
You're asking the board, because they can see what you've been doing over the last, since this, we'll say December. You're asking the board, you know, for some time in which to either get it cleaned up or face the music. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm going to clean it up. I don't want the stuff. I want to get rid of it. I didn't want it there, but like my boys that you know, they're sentimental, I want to find a place to put them in or whatever because I just can't get rid of them.
Your sons?
When I'm gone,
he's deceased.
Yeah, both of them are. Well, my one deceased boy, I took his truck, it drove and run and all. I went ahead and moved it out of there because, I mean, you can start it up and drive it. I just had it there because, you know, my boys.
Yeah, so no further questions of Mr. Holt.
I just have a couple follow-ups, Mr. Holt.
Sir?
I just have a couple questions. So do you disagree that on January 9th, 2023, when the citation was issued, that you had inoperable vehicles?
He's asking if on January 9th of this year, were there any vehicles on the property that were not operable?
Oh, I'm sure on January there probably was.
All right. And there still are, aren't there?
What's that?
There still are inoperable vehicles, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And on January 9th, 2023, were there vehicles that were being stored on unpaved surfaces?
On unpaved?
Yes.
Well, do you consider gravel? That's paved, ain't it?
No? I mean, that's up for
Well,
the board. I'm not going to answer that question.
Now, see, here's the deal. I mean, it's on concrete and paved, but it's paved. But like my boy, when he just built that house, he asked them if they had to put concrete in front of their place. They said no. And he's in Erlanger. I give him the property right on mine. They said gravel. As long as it's gravel, it's paved. So I know a lot of places, I done rode around and looked, there's a lot of places that's nothing but gravel and they park their cars on it. So in that sense, then everybody that's parking their car on that gravel is in violation because,
Well-
I mean, it's paved.
Are there 2 inches of gravel?
Oh, there's more than that. I can take that Bobcat and probably dig down that far and it's got gravel. It's been there for years.
On rubbish, do you disagree that on January 9th, 2023, that there was rubbish that wasn't in proper green containers or blue containers?
Well, I'd say there was, I mean, there was a bunch of like kids' toys, you know, little ride things and stuff like that. If that's rubbish, yeah, they ride it around, they park it, they don't put it up every time. Okay. But I mean, other than that, I mean, it ain't no dump site. I've had all that stuff cleaned up.
So I appreciate that you're wanting to clean things up, but I guess my question is, as it relates to like the inoperable motor vehicles and the rubbish, I mean, Officer Jewett spoke with you back in June and September of 2020 on those issues, no citation, correct?
I don't know when that was, but that, like I said, they were sending them to the wrong address, and then whenever they finally did figure it out and they sent it to me, first thing I did, I went over and found it.
Right. No, I think the testimony from Officer Jewett was he went out and spoke with you in June of 2020 related to inoperable motor vehicles.
Nope. Never have.
You're saying no one from the city ever came out and spoke with you?
He's never come out and talked to me, never, period.
Your first citation, though, was issued in September for inoperable vehicles, correct?
I guess. I don't know.
So now is February 15th. I mean, it's been 6 months, 5 months, and you still have inoperable vehicles, correct?
I mean, I've been moving them and moving as much as I can. I can't, you know, they didn't build Rome overnight. I can't do this overnight. I mean, I do as much as I can. I try to get as much as I can done. You know, like I say, we've been there we was there for years and years before that subdivision was ever there. We had probably 400 to 500 cars at a time on that place. We had junkyard for years. Had police that used to come up and buy parts off from us. So that, you know, we got rid of, whenever we made the deal with Dries, they had to come in, and we had a guy come in at Webster out there, brought the stuff in and junked cars out and got rid of a lot of stuff. And some stuff went to my place. And like I say, this stuff has been there for years and years. And I want to get rid of it anyway. And I've been getting rid of it. I was getting rid of it before they even sent me any kind of thing. I was taking this stuff and taking it to the junkyard and getting rid of them, taking off what I want, junking them. And like when we made the deal with Dries, we made the deal right out in front of my barn there, and Dries was there, my dad, my brother, and an official from Erlanger was there. The whole deal. And whenever they made the deal, I told them what they said. My dad stayed right there. He said, he told Tom Miller that worked for Dries, he said, I want you to mount up around his place there. And he said, oh, Mr. Hope, why are you doing that for? He said, because my boy works on cars, fixes them up, and gets rid of them. And I just don't want them. I ain't going to say what he said. I'm going to say messing with him, but it ain't the way he said it. I don't want them messing with him. And that guy from Erlanger, I was right there, heard it well. I wouldn't lie about it. He said, oh, Mr. Holt, they won't say nothing. They know he's been working on cars. It ain't like I've got a junkyard there. I don't want no junkyard. Because, you know, I don't plan on being around here that long. You know, but I'm cleaning it up, and that's, you know, that's it. That's all I can say.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Holt, inoperable vehicles, you got the 53 and 54 Fords,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
At the other vehicles you mentioned were operable, drivable vehicles, is that correct?
Right, well, the 54 Ford actually is operable. It started up and run. It actually belonged to the man, M&W, that put that whole subdivision in there, done all that. I worked on his cars and stuff.
But it's not licensed.
No, well, you know what? It could be because he was licensing and insuring it, but
Back then.
yeah, I was getting it running for him, and water pump was messed up. I was trying to fix that stuff, and I got a hold of his boy and stuff, told him, but he ended up passing away. Slim did. So
How long has this property been, the whole family, how many years did you say it was?
that we lived there,
Yes,
I think 68 or 69, 68.
somewhere back before 1992.
Oh, God, yes. We moved there probably in 1955, I think, or something like that.
It's, nothing further.
Are you done?
Done.
All right. I just want to recall Officer Jewett for rebuttal, real quickly. Let's just kind of go through it. As it relates to the animal nuisance violations, how many warnings did you offer Mr. Holt?
Physical written warnings?
Yeah, are those on, I mean, this is from 2018, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, that's fine.
Physical written warnings?
Yeah.
I don't think we issued any warnings.
All right.
There were animal complaints about his dogs leaving the property, and he was spoken to either by myself or Officer Sims at the time.
All right. And as we relate to the inoperable motor vehicles, in June 8th, 2020, your notes indicate the parties were spoken with, no citation issued. And again, September 11th, 2020, parties spoken with, no citation issued. If you can kind of just explain that.
Those are situations where I believe the September 11th one specifically, Mr. Holt spoke with me out in this hallway about the inoperative vehicles.
And you did not, you gave no citation at that point?
No. He was asked to move the vehicles, and the vehicles were moved.
All right. You've heard his testimony as it relates to the inoperative motor vehicles. Did you witness on January 9th, 2023, more than the 53 and 54 truck out there as inoperable vehicles?
There were more than 2 vehicles there that were inoperative, yes.
All right. And as it relates to the rubbish, the condition on January 9th, 2023, he indicated that there were some kids' toys and whatnot. Did you witness on January 9th, 2023, more rubbish than just some kids' toys?
I don't even recall seeing kids' toys. But basically the things I saw were building materials, car parts, things of that nature.
All right. Mr. Holt has testified that there are no vehicles on unpaved surfaces, or the vehicles that are there are on gravel with more than 2 inches. Is that the condition that you saw on January 9th, 2023?
There is some gravel in various locations. I can't tell you how deep that gravel is or when it was put down. The way the ordinance specifies is that the gravel had to be in place prior to 1992. If the gravel was in place after 1992, the residence is not grandfathered, and they cannot be parked on gravel.
No further questions. Thank you.
Just a couple. Officer Jewett, have you ever spoken to Mr. Holt out at his property? Have you gone out there and spoken to him at all?
I've spoken to him a couple of times on his property, yes. The last time I spoke with him on his property, it was a situation involving the city's prior building inspector, and while we were there, that's when I had one of the discussions with him about the inoperative vehicles.
And is that back 2018 or before?
It was before, yes.
Before that, okay. And you've now heard him testify about it. He's come up to the city building through Officer Capefield, and he said he spoke to you, and you acknowledge now. He's come up here to speak to city people about his property.
Yes, the last time I spoke with him in a city building, it was in the old code enforcement office on Narrows Road. That was for the September 8th, 2022 citation for inoperative vehicles. He came to my office, explained that that he had to locate the keys for the vehicles, but once he had those keys, he would be able to tow them away. I advised him at that point that if the vehicles were removed, I would void that citation, but any citations that came after that, I would not void.
In that conversation, was that also one where he asked for a key to his son's car that is in possession of Detective Lowe's or Officer?
He did mention that one of the Erlanger police detectives had possession of a key, yes.
And so, do you know if that was ever returned to him?
I do not.
The, what he had indicated earlier about, well, anything that might have been sent to his address that listed as Erlanger, when did you become aware that that was in fact the problem and he had to list his property as being Independence?
I'm not aware of that situation.
No further questions.
Nothing further?
I have no further witnesses that I would call.
We have nothing further either. I'm not at all telling you all how to do your job, and I don't mean it that way. I know that you don't have a ton of hearings like this. So at this point, you're more than welcome to ask questions of any of these witnesses yourself or anyone else from the city or whatnot that's here. The floor is yours.
All right, so I have a question concerning the gravel. When you talk about it being grandfathered, if the gravel was there before 1992, gravel breaks down, so do you have to usually replenish it to keep it at that level?
It has to be maintained at least 2 inches of depth.
Okay, and so we don't know whether or not that was the case with this property?
No.
And as far as inoperable vehicles, those can be, inoperable vehicles can be stored in a building?
They can be stored in a building, yes.
Okay.
The only question I have is, we saw the pictures of everything being hauled away, but are there any current pictures of the property itself that we can compare with?
No, I wish I'd have took one. I should have took one. It's my fault. I should have took one, and I just now, well, my son's wife, I don't know how to do that stuff. She sent that pictures to Walgreens. I went and got them today. I should have took a picture yesterday of the place and stuff. I wasn't thinking.
Okay.
I mean, I should have took pictures. It show a whole different picture than what it is now. I'm telling you, I mean, a lot of that stuff down there was old wood, firewood stuff down there. It's gone. It's all cleared out. And I had an enclosed trailer that we pulled our race car, and it's moved and stuff. I mean, I moved a ton of stuff. It just looks like a different place, you know.
I have a question, other question concerning the address, that you were not receiving the citations. And that's happened to my sister too. She lives in Independence, but her mailing address is Walton.
Right.
So that happens.
Yeah.
So that delayed you getting the citations.
Yeah, because I didn't even know I had citations, and then whenever one come, it was done fine. Citations, I never did get one, and then I would have never thought of it. My boy, he called me later on. He goes, "Hey, I found out the reason why you ain't been getting the citations." I said, "Why is that?" He said, he went online and done it. They've been sent it to Erlanger, Kentucky. You cannot. You know, like I say, we was Independence all them years. They re-annexes, made one side of the road Erlanger, other side Independence. So if you don't put Independence on mine, I will not get that letter. You know, because
Right.
that's
Yeah.
weird. They say I live in Erlanger, but you got to put Independence on there for me to get it. If I don't get a citation, I don't know that I'm doing anything wrong. You know, I didn't. I mean, I know I need to clean that stuff up and move stuff around and stuff. But I never know nothing. We've been there all them years. We've had a bunches of cars and stuff, and when you get used to this stuff, and then the modern days come along, and they tell you, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. You know, whenever I used to come out of my door, you could look around, you couldn't see a house nowhere. See, I've been there all them years like that. I mean, like I say, I want to get cleaned up. I'm gonna give it to my boys. I'm done. I'm out of there.
Right.
I don't even want it.
Mr. Holt, I have a question for you.
Yeah, for me?
Yes, for you, sir.
Okay, go for it.
The issue of, to me, the issue of you getting the citations, whether you got them or not in the mail that you're disputing, if you were spoken to on June 8th, 2020, September 11th, 2020, warning issued November 17th, 2022, Why didn't you take action at that point?
I did take action. And for number one, Darrell said he talked to me right here in this place. Darrell never has talked to me in this place. The only place Darrell talked to me was over on Narrows Road. Now, I've talked to Steve here several times. I come over looking for Darrell, and they send Steve out. I mean, Steve's right there. You can ask him how many times I've been over here. A bunch. I said, I need to get hold of Darrell. Well, I'll try to get hold of him. And I give him my phone number. He said, I'll have Darrell call you. Did you call me, Darrell? I called you, yes. Not on my phone. You never did. Okay, all right. Okay, that's fine.
I do have
You
a
say
question.
you did, you did.
I do have a question for Officer Jewett. So it does seem like there wasn't a lot of time between the ones that were issued in November and then again in January. So why, and he was improving things all along, so why wasn't that not good enough?
At that point, he had stopped his communication with us, and several different opportunities, I went over and looked at the property, and nothing had changed.
Okay.
So on January 9th, I issued those citations.
Okay. So now we're communicating again. So we're back in communication with them, the city is. So that's good. The other question I had too, because it sounds like Mr. Holt would like to clean up this property, and there's several reasons why. There are things that you are sentimental about as well, for various reasons. So it is hard to do that. Was there any attempt to involve the Erlanger City social worker involved in this issue, this case, these citations? Officer Jewett?
To my knowledge, no, he did not speak with the Erlanger social worker.
Okay. So Erlanger has a social worker, which was put in place in I think the first part of 2018. And the Erlanger social worker was put in place by Councilwoman Jessica Fetty, who was now the mayor of Erlanger. And it all started because she attended a code enforcement meeting where someone was being cited for their side porch, which was out of code. And she said, we should be helping these people and not just finding them and doing that type of thing. So she established a city social worker who is available to any department to use to help out the residents if they are not in compliance. And so I would have thought that step would have been taken before another citation would have been issued. Yeah, what is your thoughts on that, Officer Jewett?
Generally, my office does not involve the social worker unless we come across things that are a hazard, health and safety-wise, to the individuals living there, such as hoarding issues, cases where they're about to lose the home or could be homeless, properties that have inoperative motor vehicles and rubbish in their outer areas away from the home. I don't generally involve the social worker with that.
Okay, so then we're saying that the violations here are not in any way of a hazard or unsafe. We're basically saying it's just unsightly. Is that what we're saying?
That's correct.
And it's unsightly to the people who built up around the property, with the Dries subdivision.
That's correct.
I'm assuming from the pictures there are trees and everything that block the view from Sky Drive,
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
except maybe during the winter when the leaves are all down?
that's correct.
But
Okay.
still, when you drive up the road, I had it on my phone, a video of it when you drive up and stop in front of my driveway, went on up, turned left, went down. You couldn't see nothing because you can see my yard when you go by,
Right.
but that's it. You can't see nothing else unless
Yeah.
you're in a helicopter or something.
Okay, so the thought is that, particularly hearing how this all happened with the subdivision being built up around you and the concern with your deceased sons who you have sentimental attachment to things that maybe I wouldn't have. I might have a necklace or something like that, but you have cars.
Yeah.
And different things, so it's different. And because it has been a case that even though you've made progress, it seems like Officer Jewett, the fact that he feels like you didn't communicate with him, and maybe progress has slowed down, I just think the city did not do its due diligence because it did not involve the city social worker, because she's here to help everybody, not just if you have a hazard. So is it possible that we could involve her now?
I guess I appreciate your comments.
Yes.
I think, with all due respect, I think you're a little outside your role as a code
Okay.
enforcement board. I think that what's in front of this board is very specific based on our ordinance of what the board does in the statute, that, that the board shall determine based on the evidence presented whether a violation was committed, and when the board determines that no violation was committed, can dismiss the action. If a violation has been committed, the board may issue an order upholding the citation and may order the offender to do one of two things: pay a civil fine up to the amount that we're requesting, or some combination of probated fine and a remedy of a continuing violation within a specified time. I just don't think the board can order the city and how they handle their
Okay.
ordinances. And there's nothing in the ordinance that requires the police social worker to be involved.
Okay, is there anything?
I was going to suggest
Yes.
before we began the hearing is, I represented the city of Newport for 19 years.
Right.
And the code enforcement boards. And there were a number of times over those years where we would have a hearing, and rather than having a disposition on that night, the board was able to say, because it is, Mr. Gallan's indicated, you have certain limitations on what you can do and not do, is that we to hold off on the hearing, a decision for like 60 days and allow somebody to remedy whatever the issue may or may not have been. And at that point in time, the code enforcement people took a look to see what was done and report back to the board. And if nothing's been done to remedy the situation, the board would take whatever action. If the remedy was, if it was being addressed and taken care of, then that left the board the option to, if we wanted to dismiss the citation. But that's, we didn't have a social worker to help with that, but
Right.
code enforcement followed that during that 60-day period, for example.
Right.
So I was going to suggest that in lieu of all the testimony, what we were doing, so.
Okay. So, Mr. Gatlin, is that something the board is allowed to do?
The board, like I said, can either impose the fine tonight that we're requesting, or give a specified period of time for Mr. Holt to clean up these violations prior to the imposition of the fine.
And in the ordinance, does it specify that Mr. Holt has to stay in contact with the code enforcement officer?
No.
Because
The ordinance is very clear. It's just whether the condition is on the property or not. The fact that the city has really for years given him warnings prior to the citations, there's no legal requirement for that, but that is absolutely what the goal of code enforcement is, and is certainly
Right.
what the whole goal is here. I mean, there's a reason this is the first appeal of a citation you all have heard in a long time. This is not where the city wants to go. Our position just is this is a very flagrant offender that we just are trying to get his attention because the property needs to be cleaned up.
Okay. So, yeah, I think we have his attention. Officer Jewett, because what Officer Jewett said was that one reason he made the citation in January is because Mr. Holt had not kept in touch with him. I did note that. He said work stopped too. He might have said that, but he doesn't really know for sure. The only other thing I have is just a comment on the purpose of the code enforcement is to be proactive and you want to achieve voluntary compliance. So I just want to note that as well. But that's on the code enforcement webpage.
I have a question. Mr. Holt, how much longer do you think it will take you to be able to clear out everything that needs to be cleared out so that you're within the limits that you need to be?
I'd like to have 60 or 90 days to make sure everything's right. I mean, you got to go by the weather too. I mean, you know, the thing about it is, I mean, I should have took pictures like the yard. If I go out through there and you dry something out there, it sinks in, it just leaves ruts in the yard. I hate doing that there, but
Rather than asking for 90 days, which seems a long time, what, if the board were to use a 60-day period.
That's fine,
for
whatever.
review and see what's been done, of course, who knows what.
if they review it now, they're going to see a lot's been done.
When it comes to the weatherman doesn't know what it's going to be.
Yes, I understand that, but my question is, considering that everything stays the way it is now weather-wise, without any, I mean, obviously, if we get some major snowstorm or something.
Say 60 days.
Realistically, 60 days, you think you can have the rest of it cleared out?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's
Okay, thank you.
60 days, as long as everything keeps going like it is, like the last few days. That was great. I moved a lot of stuff and cleared a lot out, but like I say, I ain't stopping. No matter if this year whole deal's over, I ain't stopping. I want to clean it up. You know? I
So
want to clean it up.
after the 60 days, let's say you have 60 days. When those 60 days are over, then what? Officer Jewett goes out, takes more pictures, makes a judgment, and we're back here looking over those pictures again. That's where
Well, if there's been an improvement,
I
then,
think, but
Like for Mr. Jewett or someone to be contact, phone contact is fine, but contact Mr. Holt, see how things are going, what's been doing, he can kind of report what's been going on, so that, and then we see what things are at 60 days, it should be done, but that allows the contact to be made.
Can I add just one thing real quick? Seems like we're talking about the extension of the time. You know, if that is going to be a consideration, I would offer up something that would aid Darrell in doing his job properly, would be as we go back out and we check it at whatever frequency is agreed upon. I think that having access to the property, so we're not out, 100 feet away taking pictures through trees, would be very beneficial to the board and to everybody, so that way we could stand there with everybody, talk about it, take pictures of it, and see it firsthand, standing at our feet and not 100 yards away or something like that.
To that end, we do like, can you bring photos up on a regular basis or whatever, that, and that way by doing it, there's a direct contact between Mr. Jewett or whomever and Mr. Holt. It's a, for that way, there's a sure person to person, whether by phone or face to face.
Right.
Like he's been coming up there to address these issues.
is there a problem, does Mr. Holt have a problem with Officer Jewett coming out to the property and seeing it on a regular basis?
Are the dogs still?
Yeah, I mean, they're chained, but you never know.
I guess I'm going to jump in. I mean, we have proven by more than a preponderance of the evidence that these citations were validly issued. There's no denial that the citations are validly issued. I understand the appetite of the board to want to give him an opportunity to remedy it, but I find it absurd that the city is being requested to give another 60 days when some of these conditions have been like this for years, and we're not allowed to go on the property to better inspect it. I have a strong problem with that.
Mr. Gatlin, am I allowed to make a motion?
Yes, absolutely.
I move that we enforce the fines. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We need a roll call vote?
All those in favor?
No, we need a roll call vote. Steve will take it.
Okay.
Mr. Wilt, do you agree with that?
No, not at this time.
Ms. Mitchie?
Yes, I agree.
Mr. Stubblefield?
Yes, I agree.
Ms. Dietz?
No, I do not agree.
So that motion would fail for lack of majority.
Well,
Look,
we, The issue with the 60 days, so this started in September as far as actually being cited, and I understand the problem was before that. I mean, how realistic is it in 60 days you'd actually have all of it done? Or how realistic is it more realistic that it would be somewhat cleaned up?
She's asking if, Mr. Holt has.
Okay.
His hearing is worse than mine.
Oh, okay.
The request would ask is, can you clean this up in 60, or you're just going to try to make a dent in it within 60 days?
No, I'll clean it. I can clean it.
I just want to say that was my reason for asking him how long he thought it would take to clean up everything. Not necessarily to give him an extension that at 60 days you would go out again, officer, and examine the property, but trying to understand how long realistically he thinks it would take him to clear everything out so that we're not in this position again. And I would not want to have to charge you more. I would not want to see another citation take place. But I do agree with Jack that, you know, you've been given all this time, and it just seems that now is when you've started acting on everything.
No. I got all my pictures had dates on them.
But that's just in December. That's what she's talking about.
Yeah.
But yes, that's correct.
So I'd like to make a motion that, in lieu of the fact that Mr. Holt is very willing to clean up his property, and in lieu of the fact that there may be available resources that he doesn't even know about that may help him clean up the property, i.e. the city social worker. I'd like to give him an extension of 90 days to clean up the property. And in lieu of the fact that also it is a site problem, not a hazard or anything else. That will account if we have hopefully not a bad snow in March, but 90 days, 3 months. I think that'd be more realistic. So I'd like to make that motion that he be given 90 days, that the citations are no, and that it's 90 days to clean up the property. Do I hear a second?
If I might add, I think that 90 days is extending it even further than it needs to be, considering he's already had a number of years that he's known that this property needs to be cleaned out.
And might I add, Mr. Gatlin, these citations are issued based on complaints from other residents in the area, correct?
They can be. I don't know what the source of these are. I don't know if these are complaints from residents or not. Initial complaints from residents.
Initial? Okay, so I guess my question is, after the 60,
Initially back in 2018? Yeah, 2018, not anything.
okay, well, I guess
That was with the dogs.
my question is after, 60, 90 days, Officer Jewett goes back out there, whatever other parties go out there, check it out. And even if he deems that, okay, you did clean it up, but then there's a resident 2 weeks later or a month later that's not satisfied with it and makes another complaint, we're right back here again.
But what I'm addressing is,
That's why I'm against giving any extension. That's why I filed the motion to enforce the fines.
I don't want to interrupt, but that was what I was asking. There was no complaints about these items. The complaint from local people was about the dogs back in 2018. As you can see from when they take the photographs, they had to go up on the hill on the back of somebody else's property and shoot from a distance because you couldn't take those pictures from the street, so people driving by or neighbors can't see how you've been doing that. But that's anyway. But that's the citizen complaints. I'm concerned. Like I said, I did that 19 years, and I know how that goes. But these complaints were 2018.
And so what we're saying too is that no other resident complained about this particular ones, the citations we're dealing with today. Okay. Well, then I'd like to make a different motion.
Can I say something
Sure,
first, before you
sure.
make a motion? I didn't go along with the original motion because I wanted to hear more. It appears to me that there were citations, well, 3 citations on November 17th. That's approximately 90 days. We have not had inclement weather for 90 straight days. In fact, I'd say very few days during those 90 have been inclement weather. And the reason I hadn't decided yet, and that's why I didn't go along with the original motion, why should we as a board think this can be cleaned up in 60 days when no citations were issued but just warnings, and then the citations came out and there's no history to show that this is addressed complete in 90 days, and now we're being asked for additional time? I don't see a pattern that indicates to me personally that this will be done in 30, 60, or 90 days. And that's all I have to say.
That's why I wanted to show you the photographs of what's been, all the truckloads have been removed since December. The first part, and then, of course, the end of December, weather was, I didn't dry, but that's when we had our very cold, our cold spell and stuff. But the thing is, he's been working on it, and all those loads have come out from then until now, so.
In November, I got pictures on my phone, got the dates in November, I took them out of there.
Took some out in November.
November,
I understand it's been worked on, but I guess my question is, at what rate has it been worked on? Because a little work here or there, and without any clear evidence that there's been, in 90 days, substantial work, I have a hard time believing it'll be cleaned up complete in 60 days. And whether a neighbor can see it and complain or not, I think the citations are clear that, or the codes are clear that it needs to be cleaned up. Whether it's seen or not, it's against the code. Am I not right on that?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And frankly, that's a concern the city has with any extension of time to monitor, that we're not given access to the property, because as soon as leaves start coming back on the trees, we frankly are not going to be in as good a position to see it. But the fact that they have put trees up, that's not in the ordinance. It's not a buffering issue. It's not.
Yeah, and part of that was, and I'm not familiar with the timeline of when the Dries company went in and started to develop around there, but I have a little issue with trying to build a mound. If the Dries company were to build a mound around it just to protect it from viewing, that just doesn't seem like it would have been appropriate.
That was done back when the subdivisions was first put in. Dries did that back then. But that's not anything we're talking about doing now. That was actually constructed back then, back when the subdivisions were built. So it's not anything that we would do now. I mean, it's already done for many years. As far as the 60-day, the proof would be in the pudding. Either if you can, it's good. If you didn't get it cleaned up in 60 days, I mean, he's certainly at your mercy at that time, sir. And that's what we're just asking for the final 60 to make all these changes, so.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
And so then I have a question. So why can't Officer Jewett go on the property because of the dogs?
That was concerned for at that point in time. I don't think anybody's, up to now, I don't think anybody's ever been on the property.
So Mr. Gatlin's point that if we would extend it, then nobody can get on the property. No, but is that the case?
No,
Nobody on the property?
I think if Officer Jewett or somebody would call Mr. Holt, say we're kind of, it's an isolated area.
Yes.
I mean, although it's in a city and stuff. This is really, as you can maybe tell from the photo, somewhat isolated. So it's just always better if somebody knows that somebody's going to be on the property. And that was the only concern. So if Officer Jewett were to call Mr. Holt or Officer Canfield or somebody to call and just say, okay, I'm going to come out tomorrow or come out today, I'm going to do whatever, they can make those arrangements, I think. I just didn't, it wouldn't being isolated. His son lives on a hillside right above him. I think that's where some of the photos might have been taken, is that correct? Up where his son lives, Mr. Jewett?
No, it's taken on public right-of-way,
Right.
Adjacent to the son's property.
His son's property, okay.
Because Mr. Holt had talked about the dogs could be an issue.
Well, the dogs are on the property, they're chained.
Right, but Mr. Holt even said, but that something could happen.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
That's just an overcautious response on with the dogs. The dogs really, but it's just an isolated piece of property, and just a concern about somebody coming on unannounced back in that area. But it's not like it's a subdivision street or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that's no problems as long as if somebody calls in advance that they're going to come. That's the only concern.
so does Officer Jewett have any concerns about that?
Concerns about going onto the property?
Right.
I believe if there are any canines on the property, if they're properly restrained, there wouldn't be an issue.
So does somebody live there right now? I'm a little bit,
Mr. Holt does.
you live there?
Lives in the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
My wife passed away. They got her on that mine in her name, but she passed away.
I see.
So I'm just,
Lives there by himself. Brother Jim sometimes stays there at the house and property as well. And then his son lives, he gave his son property on the hillside above. That's where his son built the house.
I
There
understand.
for his son and his son's family.
I understand.
So they used, back before Dries and everybody ever came around, that was always called Holt Mountain, because they were the only people up there. There's actually cemeteries on the property of the Holt family for multiple generations. And so it's always Holt Mountain at that time before anything else ever came along.
Okay, thank you.
So I think maybe we should consult with each other. We can do that, can't we, Mr. Gatlin?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was going to make
You
one
go
more
ahead.
thing. On behalf of the city, maybe one more recommendation that you might consider that the city would be very much open to would be extending maybe a 45-day extension with the stipulation that we are allowed to enter the property with his permission stated tonight. Because then I think it obtains our objective of him cleaning up the property, which is what we're all here for. It just extends it another month and a half. And then it gains us access, because here in a month and a half or so, we're not going to be able to visually see onto the property.
Right.
So the city, not again telling anybody how to vote or do anything, the city would be agreeable to that.
Is there any thought about the city being agreeable to involving the city social worker?
Again, I'm not in the police department, have
Well,
anything to do
it's
with the
not-
social worker. I will say that we meet with the social worker weekly. She's well
Okay.
aware of the situation. We meet with her also additionally every month, and she's well aware of the situation.
So she has been involved.
She's aware of the situation. That's all I can say.
Okay. 45 days. What do you think about that, Mr. Holt?
How much can you accomplish in 45 days?
I don't know, I guess I can do what I can do.
But if they tell you they're going to take 45 days, that obviously barred strange circumstances, you're willing to give it a shot for 45 days?
Yeah, I'm hoping, really, they say we might get tornado tomorrow. I'm hoping a tornado come through and just blow everything, just blow it completely away. That'd be great, then it'd be done. You want to come up there, don't you?
Yeah.
Sure, you come on up there.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we want to,
Microphone here, so I don't know.
If I could just bring the board, I guess I misunderstood your question. Everything has to be on the record. So you all can certainly discuss amongst yourselves, but not off the record. All right, thank you. I didn't even realize what was going on there. No, it's no different than any other council situation where, yeah.
All right, you want to start the conversation, you want to go ahead and put it on the record? Well, just what you said back there. I think we have a discussion open like this. We've been watching too much Court TV. So.
No, I've been on too many real juries to, so this is my concern. Number one, I think, because you didn't bring pictures of the way the property stands as of today, I would like to put in a request that Officer Jewett can go onto the property and examine it. If we were to give you an extension, because I'm not saying that we're voting that way or not, and if whatever time frame we make it, 45 days, whatever, if in those 45 days it's not cleaned up to the satisfaction of the city, then all of these citations that have been issued would have to be paid, and then the city would decide what happens from there. Because I don't know what jurisdiction we have as far as, do we issue more citations, or on that date you would have to pay what's already been given out, and then there would be an additional one issued on top of that if everything's not done to our satisfaction. But in the city's defense, you have had a number of years that you've been contacted and know that this property has had to be cleaned up. Plus the fact that our city ordinance has been in existence for many years, and whether it's a hazard or whether it's aesthetics, how something looks, the point is that in our city ordinance, it states how a property should be kept. That's
Right, so I guess, so one question I have is, if based on what Irene said, so if we didn't uphold the citations today, if he does get 45 days, and it's not up to par to what Officer Jewett would like it to, well, it should be to be code, then he issues new citations?
No, I think,
It's my understanding, I just simply, what I was going to propose, is what we've done in the past, is that if it's not cleaned up, for then these citations are upheld.
Okay, so there's an extension of these citations?
yeah, so my thought would be is, if the will of the board is to make a motion to give him 45 days to clean this up, that we, by agreement, would not have to renotice anybody. We would be back in 60 days. But if it's cleaned up in 45 days, we would pull it from the agenda. If it's back in 60 days, the city would report, and I say 60 because you all meet every 30. You know, the city would just report at that meeting that it has not been cleaned up, and I would be hopeful at that point that the board would just then impose the citations.
To recall it for your April meeting, is that?
Absolutely, yeah, and with the hope that we don't ever show up for that meeting.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
at least we would all agree that we don't have to renotice or do anything else, that we're just going to be here on the April meeting, and he has 45 days to clean up, and that he actively works with code enforcement for access to the property. Frankly, for safety of city employees, I want there to be communication and that everybody knows when, you know, when we're going on the property. And my thought is we only need to go once, and that's when it's cleaned up, that we're called for a clean bill of health. That would be our hope. So. Do you agree, Officer Jewett? I mean, there's no point in going more than once other than to
So
see it's
you're
clean.
basically stating that he's given the time period. At the end of that time period, he would call me and say, come and look at the property.
And that gives you then, theoretically, a few days to confirm it prior to the time the board would meet in April.
Sounds good. That's kind of what I was proposing before we began all this earlier this evening. I think it works for the city and for, but we have, lawyers, we make us go through certain formalities these days, understandably, but that's what we would like to do.
So Irene, do you want to make a motion? It was your suggestion?
Well, do you guys have anything to say? Okay.
Since we're at a May deadlock, and let me suggest something. Yeah.
Yeah.
The board can suspend a hearing and process. I think I've been gone from city law for 14 years, so I shouldn't say that's the way it can still be done, but you could technically suspend this in process and come back on the April thing to see how it's been resolved. I would imagine. Does that work?
Yeah.
I mean, and that doesn't require any,
Do you want
all
to
the
make a
other
motion?
attachments to it, if that makes sense.
I have no objection to that.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we give Mr. Holt 45 days and that Officer Jewett is allowed on the property to check it out. But I don't want to be back here in another 60 days to find out that the work wasn't done. And I know that times are hard, and I know that money is short, and I don't want to have to impose more citations on someone. But I'm going to make this motion trying to show a bit more grace and mercy than I feel the city has already shown for many years now. But my motion is that we give you 45 days, but in those 45 days, it has to be cleaned up completely. I understand the sentiment, but you also said that that car or truck has already been moved off of your property. And I want you to make it clear to Officer Jewett, too, what address you need to receive your notices in, because obviously there's confusion between Independence and Erlanger.
Well, they know it now because they've been sending it.
Same address, only Independence instead of Erlanger.
Yeah.
Okay, all I'm saying is that I want to make sure that the city knows that.
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay, then that's, my motion is to give him 45 more days.
Do I hear a second? I'll second it. Roll call vote?
Mr. Stubblefield,
No.
Mr. Wilt,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchie,
Yes.
Ms. Dietz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you all.
And then just for clarification, so we don't have to renotice, we'll continue it till April, and
I'll check online and find out when your April meeting is, and if, as long as it's not on April 15th. When I need to talk to my Uncle Sam and Aunt Iris. Family matters come first.
I believe it should be April 19th.
Wonderful. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
And apologize for taking so much of a evening on a wonderful night tonight. But thank
As
you.
long as we get home before the storms.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, the tornado that's coming, it's going to clean all
Yes.
this up.
Yes.
And,
All right. So at this point then, we can adjourn the meeting? Oh, we have to finish I forgot. I gotta find that sheet now, what I do with that sheet. Okay, do we have any unfinished business other than the hearings? I don't believe so. Any new business? Any announcements? So I do have a motion for adjournment.
I second it.
Motion, meeting adjourned.